Let's take you to Atlanta, where just moments ago, Sidney Powell, one of the 19 co-defendants in the Trump election case in Fulton County, pleaded guilty. This is just one day before jury selection was set to begin in her trial.
Hey there, guys. Welcome to the channel. Man, who would have thought, right, with a political channel, just meant for talking about politics, spreading the conservative message, which for anyone that's keeping score, anyone still on the fence, really all that is just plain old common sense. You know, in the fight against the people that literally will do everything that they possibly can to act and think and vote in a way that involves pretty much no common sense at all. I mean, they will do serious mental gymnastics, complete and total verbal backflips in order to avoid common sense pretty much at all costs. But anyway, that's what this channel is supposed to be about. And who knew that all we would ever talk about is freaking court cases and litigation and prosecutions? It's insane when you think about it, man, when you see what's really going on. But here is the game that the left is playing. You know, they just want a complete and total sensory overload. They want so much lawfare, which is what this is. This is lawfare. Anyone on the planet, anyone that doesn't have the resources of Donald Trump would have been completely crushed by this by now. They'd have been broke. They'd have been General Michael Flynn a year ago or more. They'd be destroyed in every possible way. But so that's what this is. This is lawfare. The left wants so much of it. You know, they want so many cases. Then when most people are, all they're going to do is take it in the aggregate. Anyone looking is going to think, well, damn, that's insane. I mean, this guy must be terrible. What a mess. 2 impeachments, 91 felony indictments over 91 criminal counts over 4 indictments. Civil fraud, civil court cases, federal cases, state cases, bench trials, jury trials, Supreme Courts of a dozen states at least stepping in. It all looks pretty bad. And it is bad. It's terrible. But when you look at these things, as most liberals never will, you know, they're just, for whatever reason, not intellectually capable, or usually they're just not ready in most cases to look at these things individually. But when you look at them individually, one by one, line by line, it all falls apart. And honestly, a perfect example of this, one of the best examples of this, is not long ago they were telling us that Sidney Powell, the president's lawyer, had turned on the president. She had issued an apology to the people of Georgia for trying to steal their vote. A guilty plea from a guilty person who was sure to point the finger at the most guilty person in the history of guilt, Donald Trump, right? So apparently, big surprise, everything was not as we were sold. And when you look at it, guys, not even the apology was as we were sold. But we would never know that if not for the actually diligent reporting of one journalist filing a Freedom of Information request to access the Sidney Powell apology letter. If not for that, we would just have the headlines. And now even MSNBC is saying, hey, wait a minute, guys, wait a minute. This is not an apology, and this is not what we told people that it was. Now, of course, they're only saying that in print. You know, this is what they've said in print. Nothing says, I'm really not sorry, like one sentence scrawled on a piece of lined notebook paper, which is exactly what Powell and Chesboro submitted. To say the apologies do not seem heartfelt is an understatement. They more closely resemble a child dragged by the ear to apologize to a teacher on the receiving end of a pea shooter. Yeah, so joke's on you. Apparently this is the best malicious prosecution and coercion gets you. But of course, you know, like I said, this is only print. This covers their bases, makes them look like they actually have some journalistic integrity. You know, they know the real extremists that keep them in business. They don't actually read. They certainly don't read that. They watch. All the extremists watch the other extremists.
And even when it comes to coup plotters higher up in the scheme, like the defendants in Trump's Georgia racketeering case, we have seen some seemingly genuine contrition.
If I knew then what I know now, I would have declined to represent Donald Trump in these post-election challenges. I look back on this whole experience with deep remorse.
It was Trump lawyer Jenna Ellis during her guilty plea earlier this year. There's also a bail bondsman named Scott Hall, who was part of the election interference scheme that helped break into a voting machine. He wrote a letter to the judge where he apologized for his role in the plot, and he took responsibility for his actions. But the other 2 Trump Confederates who pleaded guilty were not so contrite. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution received each of their letters to the judge in that case, part of the condition of their plea, and I will read them both in full. From coup lawyer Sidney Powell, quote, "I apologize for my actions in connection with the events in Coffee County." That's it. Here's what we got from her fellow coup plotter, Kenneth Chesboro, quote, "I apologize to the citizens of the state of Georgia and Fulton County for my involvement in count 15 of the indictment." Doesn't even say what he did.
Yeah, I'll break in just here real quick. Look at this poor guy's face, man, and listen to the absolute disgust in his voice. It's pretty awesome, actually. Hand-scribbled letters that basically may as well say to him personally, "Get effed, bro." And notice, how many times he's actually used the word coup. He really, really wants his audience to believe that he believes that that was a coup. Yet, he's never been angry that these plotters of coups, like the evil, Chesboro and evil Sidney Powell, if he really believed that they were responsible for a coup, he would have been screaming to high heaven that they would allow them to plead guilty to charges no stronger, no more serious than shoplifting a deodorant from Walgreens. Because none of that is important. All they needed you to believe was that they were guilty, they were forced to apologize, and they are going to testify against Donald Trump.
It's never been more obvious that those two people do not regret their actions in the slightest, except perhaps insofar as they got caught. And one of the lessons here is that you simply cannot let people like Trump and his allies determine their own accountability, because they simply will never do it on their own. They have to be brought to account by the full force of the law.
Allies of Trump must be brought to account by the full force of the law. He just said that. He really, truly said that. Unapologetically, unashamed. All allies of Trump must be brought to account by the full force of the law. And the people at home watching him, they believe it. And I promise you, man, not one of them has ever said or even thought a similar thing about any BLM or Antifa rioter that damaged, assaulted, or murdered anyone. Not once. Never have they thought. They just think, they probably think that's a beautiful part of democracy. But, just think about this. The government of Georgia used the RICO statute against a president's lawyer in order to force not only a weak and very, very pled down bogus confession charge, but then make them apologize basically in the public square like some sort of tin pot dictatorship would do to an unruly dissident. This is what we have. This is what they've done. And this is the sort of thing that the left, they're out there doing victory laps over. They get off on this stuff. This impresses them. They feel like this is democracy. This is protecting democracy. But they're not doing victory laps over the meat, over the actual substance. They're doing victory laps over the headline, over the way it looks and the way they can use it to control people. And the headline was, Sidney Powell forced to apologize for trying to steal the election. When in reality, what she scribbled was, "I apologize for my actions in connection with the events in Coffee County." Just a handwritten scribble, the absolute bare minimum to fulfill her coerced requirement to the court. So just to recap, our poor mushy-brained Democrat friends truly do believe with every ounce of their beings that Fani Willis pursued and prosecuted one of the architects of the attempts to steal democracy away from the voters, held her accountable, and demanded that she apologize for her treasonous act, when in reality, she got a hand-scribbled note that says, "Go F yourself." And, they want us to view these things in the aggregate, like I said. So let's do that. Look at where we are in this country in the aggregate right now. We've got a prosecutor in one state going after a president's lawyer for what they allege was vote theft, framing it as a protection of democracy. While at the very, very same time, almost at the exact same moment, we have a Supreme Court in another state literally stealing an entire state's vote. Again, just to protect democracy. And a lot of people refuse to see this, guys. A lot of people refuse to see it. And I just cannot imagine why or how people do not see it, even in the aggregate. These are all individual events tied together by one tiny, barely hanging on thread. And a thread that the left has literally been pulling and pulling for almost a decade. And still, Donald Trump will not unravel. He will not let them unravel him. And luckily, more and more people are seeing it, man. When they look at Fani Willis, when they look at Sidney Powell's confession and apology, they don't see a democracy thief, man. They see a woman who scribbled on a piece of paper because the government told her that if she didn't do that, they were going to destroy her life, ruin her career, fine her, and drag her through court cases until she's broke. And then at the end, throw her in jail for as long as, in Chris Hayes' words, the full force of the law will allow. Simply because she's an ally, again, Chris Hayes' words, an ally of Donald Trump. And here's a result. For anyone who can still critically think and form their own thoughts, people are starting to realize that if they can do it to the president's lawyer, then they can do it to anybody. And they will do it to anybody. Anybody that gets in their way. But anyway, that's all I've got, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you haven't already, please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. And we'll see you in the next one.